As we said, we're not planning on recovering the ship today. Hey, welcome back to Earth, Starship.
Starship's 11th flight looked at first glance like just another smooth test run. No explosions, no drama. But beneath the surface, this mission was packed with hidden surprises. One of the biggest came from the booster itself. Not only was it reused, but SpaceX did something surprisingly clever with it this time. Let's break down the new landing footage and see what's really going on. The clip begins just after ignition. Like the recent tower catch tests, this booster also performed a massive 13-engine landing burn, but this time it used the upgraded V3 engine configuration. So, what makes this setup different? As the booster dives back through the thicker layers of Earth's atmosphere, it depends on 4 hypersonic grid fins to guide it toward the landing zone. You can't really see them working in the short clip, but if you go back to the full live stream, there are some key moments worth noting. About 5 seconds before ignition, the booster is still slicing through the air at over 1,400 kilometers per hour. Around 4.5 kilometers up, it starts to slow slightly, but once those engines ignite, it's still moving fast, really fast. All 13 Raptor engines ignite, every single one in the middle, ring plus the central trio, to slam on the brakes. That's a staggering amount of thrust, and it's happening barely 2 kilometers above the ocean. Now this is where things get interesting. Instead of switching from 13 down to 3 engines like before, SpaceX tried something new. This time, the booster transitions from 13 engines down to 5, keeping the center 3 and adding 2 more from the middle ring, 1 on each side. This wasn't just for show. It was a data-gathering experiment for the next generation of super heavy boosters. Future V3 versions are expected to use 5 engines during this phase to give more control and extra redundancy. That way, if one engine fails, the other 4 can still keep the booster steady and on target. This concept isn't entirely new. During Flight 10, SpaceX tried shutting down one of the center engines mid-burn and replacing it with one from the outer ring. The goal? To make the landing system more fault-tolerant. Back to Flight 11, after running on 5 engines, the booster throttles down to 3. And that's when something incredible happens. The booster seems to hover for a full 6 seconds, almost motionless mid-air. That level of precision is no accident. Since the ultimate plan is for the booster to be caught by the tower's mechanical arms, this may have been a stability test to see just how long it can hover and stay balanced. Then, just 200 meters above the ocean, all engines shut off and the video cuts out right before splashdown. Classic SpaceX move. You just know it exploded the moment it hit the water. Why do they always cut right before the boom? Come on, SpaceX. You used to make entire highlight reels out of Falcon 9 explosions. This was actually the second time this year SpaceX managed to reuse a super heavy booster, and compared to the first attempt, this one went much better. That earlier test made it through liftoff and even completed its boostback burn, but it didn't survive the final landing. It ended with the familiar flash of light and a cloud of debris over the Gulf. On that flight, SpaceX was testing a steeper, more aggressive return trajectory, something that likely pushed the booster beyond its limits. But that's the point. Even the failed attempts are goldmines of data. Every single one brings them closer to nailing these landings and unlocking full reusability. What's especially cool about Flight 11 is that even though it was the last mission for this version of Super Heavy, SpaceX didn't retire it quietly. They used it to test new systems and squeeze out every bit of information they could before moving on to the next generation. Because Flight 12 isn't just another test, it marks the start of a whole new chapter. SpaceX is now entering a phase focused not just on flying, but refining every part of the process for rapid, repeatable launches. Elon Musk has been clear. Starship isn't just a rocket. It's the backbone of his entire vision to make humanity a multiplanetary species. In a recent post on X, he doubled down on that idea, saying that Starship's ultimate goal is far bigger than any mission. It's about securing the future of consciousness itself. He's not exaggerating. Musk believes that building a permanent presence on Mars will require sending over 100,000 people and 1 million tons of cargo. He's not talking about a research trip. He's talking about a civilization. He said it before, the mission isn't just to send a few astronauts to another world, it's to ensure the survival of human life beyond Earth. The goal is for Mars to one day sustain itself, even if Earth can't send more supplies. That's the real milestone, making Mars self-sufficient. Right around the same time Musk made those statements, SpaceX quietly updated its website with fresh details on its long-term plans. The company listed target timelines for lunar and Martian missions, aiming for around 2028 to 2030. They even published pricing, roughly $100 million per metric ton of payload. That might sound massive, but compared to traditional deep space costs, it's revolutionary. Of course, not everyone agrees with Musk's Mars-first strategy. Many in the aerospace community believe the moon should come first, as a training ground and stepping stone. Former NASA Administrator Bill Nelson said it best, "You can't have Mars without the moon." He emphasized that Artemis research on the lunar surface will teach us the lessons we need to get to Mars safely. According to him, SpaceX's lunar lander work isn't a detour, it's a foundation. Nelson put it simply, he can't land on Mars if he doesn't have a lander. What he learns from the lunar lander will help him build the Mars lander. And that moon-first philosophy isn't just a NASA idea. It's shared by one of SpaceX's original legends, Tom Mueller, the company's very first employee, and the man behind the Merlin, Draco, and Super Draco engines. Mueller left SpaceX in 2021 to found Impulse Space, his own propulsion company, and his new mission is crystal clear: to open up the moon for regular cargo delivery and exploration. Impulse Space has already made waves with its Mira kick stages, designed for precise orbital maneuvers and payload delivery. But Mueller's ambitions go far beyond Earth orbit. His new goal? Building a dependable multi-ton cargo transport system to the lunar surface. In a recent company update, Mueller outlined how this system would work. It combines Impulse's existing Helios kick stage with a brand new lunar lander built entirely in-house. Together, they're designed to carry up to 3 tons of cargo to the moon, using proven tech to keep things reliable and affordable. Here's how the mission plays out. The lander rides to orbit on a medium or heavy-lift rocket attached to the Helios stage. Once in low Earth orbit, Helios takes over, pushing the lander toward the moon over about a week. When it arrives, the lander separates, then performs a powered descent to the lunar surface. Because Helios has such a high delta V capacity, it doesn't need in-space refueling, a massive advantage that simplifies lunar logistics. According to Mueller, this design fills a major gap in the market by offering direct, reliable cargo delivery to the moon. Impulse estimates it can deliver up to 6 tons of payload each year, split across 2 missions starting in 2028, and all at a competitive price. The approach offers both technical and strategic benefits. Using existing launch vehicles keeps things simpler, safer, and faster to deploy. Helios itself is already deep in development, with its first test flight expected as soon as next year, and operational missions planned for 2028. Much like SpaceX, Impulse takes a vertically integrated approach. They design and build nearly everything in-house, from propulsion and navigation systems to the lander's structure and flight software. That tight control helps keep costs low and quality high. Mueller also confirmed that the lander's propulsion system is already in the works. Drawing on the same engineering team that developed and launched the Mira spacecraft did in under 15 months, he's confident they can bring the lunar lander online just as quickly. The new engine will run on a mix of nitrous oxide and ethane, the same propellant combination successfully flown on Mira. This fuel choice avoids the boil-off issues that plague cryogenic systems, making it perfect for long-duration missions. It's also fully throttleable and restartable, allowing for precise control during landing, a must for a smooth lunar touchdown. Mueller wrapped up his announcement by emphasizing what really matters: sustainability, and scalability. He said a thriving space economy depends on three things: keeping a long-term presence in space, using space-based resources, and driving down the cost of moving between worlds. Improving lunar access checks all three boxes. The Moon is the closest platform for sustained human activity beyond Earth, a launch point for deeper missions and a source of valuable materials like helium-3, and because the Moon's gravity is only 1/6 of Earth's, moving materials from the lunar surface to orbit is far more efficient than launching them from Earth itself. But to make that vision possible, we first need reliable transport systems. That's where Impulse Space's lander and eventually SpaceX's Starship come together. Together, they could provide the flexibility and capacity needed to make a true lunar economy not just possible, but scalable. Just when everyone thought they'd seen everything from Starship's latest flight, SpaceX dropped another surprise: a new batch of onboard and drone camera angles showing the upper stages splashdown. And these clips revealed a lot more than expected. One of the most fascinating shots came from a drone hovering about 4 kilometers above the Indian Ocean. Around an hour into the mission, Starship begins its signature belly flop maneuver, using its massive surface area to generate drag and slow itself before reigniting for landing. The footage shows just how stable the descent really was. The ship barely wobbled, which is impressive given the sheer forces it's enduring. A huge part of that stability comes from the forward and aft flaps, which appear nearly pristine. These flaps are crucial for steering during re-entry, and seeing them intact this late in the descent is a major upgrade from Flight 10. Back then, one flap took heavy damage, but somehow held together until impact. This time, the control looked tight, deliberate, and smooth. As Starship plunges into the clouds, it reignites its 3 sea-level Raptor engines, flipping upright for landing. One engine shuts off, leaving 2 to ease the vehicle toward the ocean in a near hover before tipping over on contact. The clip ends just before the explosion, but the important part is clear. SpaceX nailed every major maneuver they were testing. But look closer and you'll notice something else. There's more visible heat shield damage than before. The upper aero cover looks torn up, with scorch marks and burn-throughs across several sections. There is even a noticeable tear between the middle and upper panels that wasn't there on earlier flights. The lower sections look heavily scorched too. During descent, you can even see tiles breaking off and flying away. But this wasn't a malfunction. SpaceX did it on purpose. They were stress testing the system again. Before launch, engineers intentionally removed several heat shield tiles, including a few from the nose. Normally, those tiles are pinned and backed with insulation, but some of these were simply glued directly to the steel surface. That left parts of the hull, especially underbelly areas, fully exposed to re-entry heat in some of the hottest zones on the ship. Flight 11 wasn't just another test. It was a let's push it until it breaks experiment. Zooming in on the flaps, you can spot clusters of missing tiles, 4 directly from one flap and 2 more near its hinge. But these weren't random losses. SpaceX deliberately removed them in grouped patterns, typically sets of 4, to monitor heat flow and plasma effects. And in several of those exposed areas, they went even further, removing not just the tiles, but also the ablative underlayer, leaving bare stainless steel visible. That's how far SpaceX was willing to go. Those exposed sections let superheated plasma leak beneath the surface during re-entry, causing warping and localized tile loss. Once plasma gets in, it eats through the boron oxide layer inside the tiles, and even though the ceramic fibers are flexible, they still transfer too much heat under those extreme conditions. This isn't about the attachment pins failing. It's about the material itself being pushed to its limits. When that boron oxide layer overheats, it breaks down, and that's when the plasma wicking effect starts. It's like a razor slicing between layers of the shield. If you check pre-flight photos, you can even see tiny gaps around the crunch wrap insulation areas near the KO wool, just enough for plasma to slip in and start tearing things apart. Each tile is precision cut from a solid billet, and even the slightest shape variation can cause those gaps. SpaceX keeps the edge radius under 1 millimeter for that exact reason. Any larger, and the risk of failure skyrockets. The pins, for their part, are holding up great. But there's still a challenge with dynamic failure in the PICAX material. Those long white streaks of residue you see after re-entry? That's a mix of melted PICA-X and boron oxide, evidence of exactly how hot things got. So yeah, it's no surprise tiles were flying off as Starship plunged toward the ocean. SpaceX was pushing the heat shield harder than ever before. SpaceX's data collection from Flight 11 was absolutely massive. The vehicle was loaded with new temperature sensors, structural strain gauges, and acoustic monitors, far more than any previous test. And while the splashdown destroyed most of the hardware, the telemetry survived. That's because SpaceX now streams nearly all of its flight data in real time, even during re-entry. They've been gradually upgrading Starlink's in-flight data relay, allowing them to receive continuous telemetry and high-definition video straight through plasma blackout. That's how they captured those wild onboard camera shots, by the way, the ones showing molten plasma wrapping around the ship like a red river. But this wasn't just for show. That footage revealed something critical. Even with parts of the heat shield deliberately removed, Starship held its structural integrity far longer than expected. The internal temperatures in several unprotected zones stayed within design limits until the very end. In other words, the stainless steel performed exactly as Elon Musk has been saying. It can survive extreme heat without catastrophic failure. That's a huge win for SpaceX's long-term reusability goals. And that's the entire point of these flights. They're not trying to land perfectly every time. They're pushing the boundaries of what's possible and then rebuilding based on what breaks. Musk has often said that every explosion is a data-rich event. That philosophy runs through everything SpaceX does. They iterate, fail, learn, and repeat, faster than any aerospace company in history. Just look at the progression so far. Starship Flight 8 was the first full high-altitude test, and it exploded during landing. By Flight 11, SpaceX has reached stable controlled descent from orbital velocity, near-perfect booster recovery, and precise engine burns, all the way through splashdown. In just a few years, they've gone from prototypes crumpling in the desert to a fully integrated two-stage system flying almost complete end-to-end missions. Even more impressive, the booster now routinely returns from over 100 kilometers up and hits its landing target with pinpoint accuracy. On Flight 11, Booster 12 came within meters of the X mark in the Gulf, despite enormous crosswinds. Every iteration gets SpaceX closer to rapid turnaround and full reuse, just like Falcon 9, but on a scale 20 times larger. And that brings us to what's coming next. Flight 12 will mark a major shift in testing priorities. SpaceX plans to focus less on the basics, like engine ignition and separation, and more on precision re-entry and recovery. There's talk that the next booster could actually attempt a catch simulation with the Mechazilla arms. Not a full catch yet, but a descent profile that mirrors what an actual tower recovery will look like. The goal is to gather data on timing, velocity, and alignment, everything they'll need to make it work safely on future flights. For the upper stage, expect more aggressive tile testing, perhaps with new materials or backing layers. They've already been experimenting with alternate attachment methods that use flexible titanium studs instead of pins, and even early tests of ablator-infused ceramic composites for high-stress zones like the nose. Eventually, SpaceX wants a heat shield that's not just reusable, but maintenance-free for multiple flights. That's the real game changer. If they can achieve that, Starship could fly dozens of missions without major refurbishment. That's what makes Mars and even lunar cargo delivery financially sustainable. So, while Flight 11 may have ended in a fiery splash, it proves something critical. The system works. Every major milestone, launch, stage separation, boost back, re-entry, and controlled splashdown was achieved. From a test engineering standpoint, that's a near-complete success. SpaceX isn't slowing down. With each test, Starship becomes more refined, more reliable, and more capable of carrying humans and entire payload systems to other worlds. And when you pair that with companies like Impulse Space building the infrastructure to land cargo on the moon, you start to see the bigger picture. A future where Earth to orbit, orbit to lunar, and even lunar to Mars logistics are fully integrated. That's not science fiction anymore. It's active engineering. SpaceX just proved they can do it. Now, it's about perfecting it. The story of Starship Flight 11 isn't just about another test. It's about progress at full throttle. Every scorch mark, every lost tile, every second of data is a stepping stone toward the most powerful, reusable rocket system ever built. Because when you look past the fire and the chaos, you see something else. A machine learning how to land from orbit, a company rewriting the rules of exploration, and a glimpse of the future we've been waiting for. Flight 12 is already on the horizon, and if SpaceX's track record means anything, it's going to push even harder. Bigger objectives, bolder experiments, and maybe, just maybe, the first sign of a Starship catch. We're witnessing history unfold, one launch, one re-entry, and one explosion at a time. Because in the pursuit of space, perfection isn't the goal. Progress is. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the technology shaping our path to the moon, Mars, and beyond. The countdown to Flight 12 starts now.